Oh, you know what? I think we might have Dan on the phone. I was going to ask you about the game last week, but instead I can ask my good friend Dan Miller-Fox too, the voice of the Detroit Lions. Dan, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm all right, Braylon. What's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm sitting in the big boy chair today, man. So no Ryan, so I'm filling in. So you got to give me some critique after the show.
Hey, we got Bill Keenis in the house too, Dan.
Hey, Dan. I couldn't get to that.
My guy, what's up, Bill?
Dan, let's jump into last week real quick. And I wrote a question down. After last game's win, I got to read it because it's a good one. After last game's win, are you more excited with a great win and how they were resilient and put it off? Or are you almost like, hey, fellas, it's a little too close for my comfort? What side do you lie on?
Can I say both?
Yeah, you can.
Mean, look, it was not a great game by any means. They made a lot of mistakes offensively, defensively. There were issues, and with 4 minutes to go, it certainly didn't look like they were going to win it. But when you walk out of a stadium with a win, you're never going to complain about that, because the reality of it is, whether they won that game or lost that game, they were going to go back to Allen Park on Monday and try to figure out how to fix all the problems that they had. And it's a heck of a lot better to go back after a win and do that than it is to try to do it off a loss. So look, you find a way to win every game you can possibly win. You don't run from your mistakes. You attack your mistakes, and you attack your weaknesses and your red flags. And I think that's what they'll do. So look, there's no sugarcoating what happened in that game. There were some issues, but man, anytime you can find a way to win, you do it. And that's the sign, I think, of this being a different team than maybe some we've seen in the past, is they have a way of figuring it out.
I agree with you 100%, man. Being in that situation, like you, around this time, you get to November, you get to December, you're just happy if you get wins, especially against a divisional opponent. What was something that you can pull from that game, Dan? You're watching that game, you're like, well, I guess you just said it, like that, or that performance, or that player, or that thing where even with the game, how it played out, you're like, that was it. I love that. I love to see that. I loved his performance.
You know what? I would say a couple things. Number one, I think just what we talked about was just their ability to bounce back, their resilience. The fact that this team just, they're gaining that ability, whether it's their offense is off, their defense is off, whatever it is, they're gaining that ability to just figure out a way to win. And again, that's what good teams do. But you know what kind of jumped out at me late in that game, Brandon, was they take over in the final 2:33, whatever it was there. And they still ran the ball. If you look at that final 75-yard drive, 29 yards, I believe it was on the ground. And that's just the faith they have in this, and the confidence they have in this offensive line and in these two running backs that they have. And to have balance in the final 150 seconds is a pretty incredible thing. And they popped a couple of those for good yardage as well. So as I was watching that, I think your first reaction is, man, you're handing off. And then boom, you see Montgomery or Gibbs churn it up and get 8 or 10 yards, and you realize, okay, there's a method to this. And it was impressive the way they finished that game off. But I think it's indicative of where this team is right now. They have a balance that we haven't seen around here in a long, long time. And those backs are explosive, and they can make big plays at any time.
You're not kidding, Dan. I thought it was the game of the year. And to me, that win meant, I think it meant more than even beating Kansas City. And I know beating Kansas City, the Super Bowl champs, was great. They were in that game the whole time. They kind of controlled that game. This one, they just were not themselves, and the Bears took advantage of it. But let's put that in the rearview mirror as you look forward to the Thanksgiving Day game, where they've lost 6 in a row now. And that ends. That's got to end. And 22 times now they will have played the Packers on Thanksgiving. They actually have a winning record against Green Bay on Thanksgiving. 12-8-1, which is great. Green Bay comes in banged up. Lions, Jonah Jackson's out right now, but they're pretty healthy.
No, they are, and I think they have proven on that. Look, you want Jonah in there. He's a big part of everything they do. But I think they've proven on that offensive line that they can endure a couple of injuries and go next man up, and they can find a way to get it done. I mean, still, when you have Ragnow and then Sewell and Decker on the outside, you're well set. And Glasgow's a veteran and a heck of a player, and they're fully confident in him. And Sorsdahl is figuring it out, man. He's a rookie now, getting some big, high leverage snaps in critical situations. And just to project a little bit, they got a decision to make with Jonah at the end of the year. They may not be able to afford to bring him back. So you're getting an indication of whether or not Sorsdahl might be able to handle that job going forward. So look, I don't want to see Jonah go anywhere, but there's a reality to the fact that You're already paying Decker. You're already paying Ragnow. You're going to pay Panay. So there's a question of what might happen with Jonah there. So, look, I want to see what Green Bay's injury report looks like when it comes out today. I haven't seen it yet, but see who's in, who's out. I mean, there's 17 guys on that injury report. There's
Aaron
a
Jones
lot going on with them. Yeah, Aaron Jones doesn't
team.
look like he's going to play. I think it's an MCL sprain or whatever it is, but and that's unfortunate for them because he's obviously a big-time player and a big-time playmaker. But look, it's an amazing day in the city of Detroit, and to have an NFC North team in there is cool. I'm looking for a win just as much as anybody. I looked it up. My record's 4-14 since I've been in the booth. So
all right, Dan.
I'm
got you.
looking to
I was
improve
just
on
about
that
to
here
look
if I
that up.
possibly can.
We got you, man. We got you. Don't you worry. We had Wayne Larrivee on yesterday, your counterpart in Green Bay. So, Bill Keenest, what do you got for us?
Wayne's a good dude,
Well,
too.
just going back to last week's game, a lot of great teams that went the whole way, had games like that during the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that game will have an impact the rest of the year. Subliminal in some respects, but you can be guaranteed Dan Campbell is going to remind guys of that game and how the team came back. And the players are going to know that. And, unless they're in the lead of every game the rest of the year, which is, improbable at best, they're going to be able to draw from that and what they did and how they did it. So I think aside from it just being a win, which is the most important thing by far, the way they won it will help them for the balance of the season and hopefully into the playoffs.
No doubt. That's what I said.
I agree with that. And I think, Bill, every time you get a win, you put it in your back pocket and it's experience. And I think you can talk about going to Kansas City and winning, going down to Tampa Bay and winning, being in Los Angeles when you give up touchdowns on the final 5 possessions of the game and still finding a way to win that game. And then, that game where you did so many things that put you in a bad spot, yet you come from 12 down in the final 4 minutes. There's no doubt. And in particular, look up and down this depth chart, how many rookies, second-year players, third-year players there are who can take a game like that and the next time they're up against it, say, you know what, we've overcome before, we can overcome again. So I don't think there's any question that it is not only huge in terms of the standings and getting a win, because they'd have been a half game up on Minnesota going into that Viking game on Sunday night if they'd lost that. And that would have been a pretty bad feeling. Now you're 2.5 up because the Vikings lost as well. So there's a lot of reasons that was a big win.
Yeah, it's crazy. We were talking about before the season started, talking to the voice of the Detroit Lions radio, Dan Miller. We were talking about before the season, it was all AFC. This AFC team, that AFC team, this AFC team, this quarterback, that quarterback. Now it seems to come down to the top 4 teams in the NFL might be all NFC teams and maybe the Kansas City Chiefs. Just talk about where the Lions are in the fold, man. 8-2, 10 games, and they're number 2 in the league. Not the NFC. They're number 2 in the league right now. Got to feel good.
Well, I mean, Braylon, it just tells you, and look, man, you live the life. It just tells you how fragile these things are when you're looking at Cincinnati or Kansas City and the seasons that they're having, and they never thought that they would be in this position. Look, nobody thought the Texans would be here fighting for a playoff spot. So, I mean, we think we know things at the beginning of the year, and maybe we do. Maybe we knew Philadelphia would be good or knew San Francisco would be good. I don't think anybody knew San Francisco would lose 3 in a row at some point.
Yeah.
But things happen, and seasons change, and rosters change, and guys don't have the year that maybe you thought that they would. But you find a way to endure, and I think that's what the Lions have done. I mean, look, guys, we're getting a pretty good sample size here. If you go back to last season in October, they're 16-4 in their last 20. I mean, that's a good sample size that's indicative of where this team is right now. They've put together a heck of a string here, and they're winning games in a lot of different fashions. And look, I still think you got to look at San Francisco and Philadelphia because they're battle-tested, have been to the postseason, and they've done it. Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell will be the first guys to tell you they haven't done anything. They haven't won a division title. They haven't even played in a playoff game. So it's get yourself in position to challenge those teams and then do it. And I think the best way to do that is obviously to get the highest seed that you possibly can. But I think, to your point, there's not one team in this league right now that you would say the Lions are going to take the field against and you wouldn't feel like they have a chance to win. Not one. Okay. And I think that's just the respect that they've earned right now from all of us and from people around the league. They're that good. And it doesn't mean they can't get better. Doesn't mean that there aren't concerns. But I think everybody's got them.
Hey, Dan, going into this last stretch of games, this last 7 games of the season after last week, what is something that you want to see the Lions improve at? Or what is something that you want to see moving forward from the Detroit Lions that will give you even more of a sense that, oh, yeah, this is going to be a really, really, really great end to a season? What is that thing?
I want to see other guys win in the pass rush. I want to see other guys. Look, Aleem, when he is rushing the passer, this is a different team because you're getting that pressure up the middle. He is a critical guy if he can do that. The other guy, and we've talked about him a number of times, for me is Pascal. Made a big play in that game last week.
Yeah.
He's a really talented guy who's just got to stay on the field, continue to develop. But to me, over the last 7 games, he could be kind of a wild card that could provide this team with a pass rush from the interior or on the end, whatever he plays, that might be able to make a difference. But look, I think we've seen what can happen when you give a quarterback in this league, and it doesn't matter if it's Geno Smith or Justin Herbert or whoever it is, or even Fields to some degree, when you give a quarterback time and space, these guys are all good enough to beat you and make you pay. And I think that winning with 4 up front, to me, becomes critical as they move forward, because I think that changes the dynamic of who they are. When that defense can get off the field and hand the ball back to this offense, which we know can march up and down against pretty much anybody, man, that's really going to be tough to beat. But it's got to be something in my mind that improves with this team. That's one of the biggest things right now that I'm looking at, because the back end gets better when the front end gets better.
100%.
And that's what I think they need to improve.
Hey, Dan, looking ahead to the rest of the schedule, we know the Dallas Cowboys, a Saturday night game. There's a TBA with the Denver Broncos, and I'm hearing that might be a Saturday game. I even read Adam Schefter the other day, and I think he might have made a mistake, or maybe he let something out of the bag that it could be a Monday night game. Do you see? What do you see prime time?
He was talking about the Dallas game, I think, when he listed the Monday night games, and I think that is the ESPN crew on a Saturday night. And I think that's why he listed that
Oh, that's great. We got Joe Buck on a Saturday night. I love that.
I think that's what it's going to end up being, because I don't think there's a Monday night game that week. But because I think it's January 1st. But
the day before, actually.
It's
the 30th.
I think the Monday night is January 1st. I think the Lions will play on the 30th.
The 30th.
The bulk of the league will play on the 31st, and then I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's a game that on New Year's Eve.
Probably not.
New Year's Day night.
Probably
but
not.
Look, you got 7 games left. 4 of them are against division opponents.
Yep.
So you got 2 against Minnesota. You got Green Bay again, obviously, coming up, and you got to go to Chicago. So to win this division, you're going to have to beat the teams you have to beat. So I think there's something to be said there. And then fill it out with New Orleans and Dallas and Denver. And it's anybody can beat you. You just found that out against the Bears. I mean, the Bears aren't a bad team. They're a heck of a lot better than they were at the beginning of the season. But to me, what stands out is those 4 divisional games, the teams that are your biggest rivals, the teams that want nothing more than to beat you and try to make your season a little bit less than what you're hoping it is. 2 games against Minnesota. The Vikings are obviously still playing really tough. I think Kevin O'Connell's done a heck of a job there.
Yes.
So that's kind of what jumps out at me, is just you're going to have to win this division and get that first ever home playoff game at Ford Field. You're going to have to earn it against the teams that ultimately you're beating in the standings.
I'll tell you this, just take the points. So right now, I'm telling you, both games against the Vikings, because all they do is play 1-score games. That's all that team does for 2 years now. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I mean, I give them a lot of credit. I mean, I think a lot of us, when Kirk Cousins went down, we thought, that's it, they're toast. And then they're playing without Justin Jefferson, too. But, man, they're still finding a way. That was a gut-wrenching loss for them against Denver.
Should have won.
But I didn't see them continuing to win without Cousins, but they've done it. And look, you go into a game against Minnesota, you better be ready to earn it. A, that's a really tough place to play. Mm-hmm. B, they still got some dogs in there on defense that can make you pay. So it's, again, just keep winning, man, because you got to just earn this thing. And we all know where we want to go and what we want to see in January, but they're going to have to earn it in November, what's left of it, and then December.
In the words of Al Davis, win, baby, win. So I'm dating myself. Kevin O'Connell was a young practice squad player when I was with the Jets, and now he's a head coach for the Minnesota Vikings. We love you over here, Dan. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving,
your family, and go Lions, right?
Amen. Appreciate you guys. Can't wait till tomorrow. It's always electric, and it's a fantastic way to spend the holiday. I hope you, all your viewers and listeners, have a fantastic Thanksgiving as well, and we'll talk to all you guys soon.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, Barry. You seen
See
it?
you there. Thanks, guys.
All right.
I watched it last night. That was fun.
There it is. That's the great Dan Miller, voice Lions Radio. And who's better than Dan?
He's a good man.
Who's better than Dan?